Hello, everyone. Welcome to Base Live. I'm Liz Prue, VP of Marketing here at Base, and I'm so excited to welcome today's featured guest, Michelle. Hello, Michelle.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to chat.
Absolutely.
For those of you that do not know Michelle, she is the CEO and co-founder of Squared Away, a team of trusted assistants who span across the nation. They're also a proud partner of Hire Our Heroes, a nonprofit organization that supports military members, veterans, and military spouses in finding meaningful employment. In addition to Squared Away, Michelle is the founder of Savvy Spouse, a job resource site for military spouses. I am so excited today to talk to you about the future of the assistant role and learn more about what you guys do at Squared Away, just because I think you're doing really, really interesting things that our audience is really going to find valuable. To kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about why you founded Squared Away and about the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a long, drawn-out story, but I'll kind of give you the highlights. Married my husband, a U.S. Marine in, 2013 at this point, losing track of dates. And I was a personal assistant in DC. I came into the military lifestyle with, I've got this, I'm going to kick butt, and nobody wanted to hire me. And it was super frustrating. So I started looking for remote work online. We were stationed in Jacksonville, North Carolina at the time. And I started working for a virtual assistant company, Zertal, back in the day, with the OGs in 2013. And I worked with them for 2 years. In 2015, they kind of blew up is I guess the best word for it. It was kind of an insane time. And I started working independently through a recommendation from one of my, what was one of my current clients. And I essentially kind of built my own independent virtual assistant business with 13 clients of my own. And then I had my little boy 6 months later. I was pregnant at the time when I started working for myself. And then in true Marine Corps fashion, my husband got orders from North Carolina to Hawaii. Kind of had a mild stroke at that point. I was like, I can't even talk to you about this right now. Like, we're going to have to discuss this later. And then I kind of made up my mind. I wasn't going to let a military move stand in my way. I had busted my butt to get to where I was. And so in October of 2016, we moved to Hawaii. I told my clients I was taking a week off to move. Did not tell them where because I didn't want to freak them out. And I moved to Hawaii. I started waking up at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
While you were pregnant?
I had a 9-month-old at the time.
Still.
So that's caffeine consumed during this period.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he and I are both mostly made up of caffeine at this point. So that's where Squared Away's base was built. And it worked. I think I told my husband every day for like 6 months, I can't do this. There's no way I can wake up every day at 3 a.m. and work with my clients, but it did. And after we had been in Hawaii for about 6 months, one of my clients, who is also my co-founder in Squared Away, said, I need to clone you. And I was like, okay, because this isn't crazy enough. Let's start a company and let's do it with military spouses. So that's kind of the broad highlights of where Squared Away started.
I think it's amazing how so often that ventures like, starting Squared Away always, they come out of like resilience. It was like, I'm not going to let all of this craziness stop me from what I'm going to do. Do you think that had you not made that big move and had that big adjustment, that you would have founded Squared Away?
That's such a good question. I think it still would have happened, but I don't think I would have been as driven to make it happen. I don't think I would have seen it as predominantly as I did, just being in North Carolina. I saw it a lot more being in Hawaii because essentially, I think of my peer group in Hawaii, 5 spouses were actually working spouses on our base that I knew personally. And to me, I was like, well, why aren't you guys like, you have a degree, you want to work, like, why aren't you? And they were like, well, by the time it takes me to do X, Y, and Z and get certified, nobody wants to hire me because I'm a military spouse. And I was like, hearing it from everybody. And it was more predominant in Hawaii than it was in North Carolina, but I still saw the same things in North Carolina. I think, yeah, I just saw it more there. And I was like, shut the front door. This is not okay.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys Squared Away offers a really diverse set of services, which I think is super interesting, like social media management. Before this call, we were talking about all the, cool tools and like new and unique tools that you guys use. Can you talk a little bit about how those unique service offerings came about? And is that something you're always fine-tuning?
Yes, that's something that we're definitely always fine-tuning because we found that, especially this is something that's become more prevalent in COVID, but the way we approach our relationships with our clients is it's not just a boss delegating to an assistant. It's more of an assistant business partnership with a client. So you're partnering to hit business priorities together. And the assistant is 9 times out of 10 going to be the doer in the relationship. So it's coming at, the typical work relationship between an assistant and a client and saying, okay, well, let's make this more of a partnership as opposed to the delegator and the delegatee. And the assistant or Squared Away assistants are, our rule is always think 2 steps ahead of your clients. So thinking 2 steps ahead of your clients includes looking at the latest tools. How can you make life easier for your clients? If you do something more than once, it should be a written process. It should live somewhere. And how can we make life easier? How can we automate something for a client? How can we save them 5 or 10 minutes here or there? And all the new tools that are constantly coming out, like you and I, Liz, were just chatting about some different tools that came out. But being on top of those, like, helps our clients say, hey, Liz, did you know that Mentor is a new social media analytics thing that just came out? Maybe you should check it out. Sharing that information with your clients and putting that bug in their ear is like you being the subject matter expert and saying, I have your best interest at heart, so I'm pushing you in that direction, and I'm always looking out for you.
How have you created a community? And to preface, I'd love to speak to, so much of our audience have made the transition to remote work because of the pandemic. How have you created a community, a collaborative remote community? Like, what are your top tips for, even folks that want to create their own groups outside of the space community here? What do you think makes those so successful?
I think just being concerned and being a part of each other's every day. Our Squared Away community, like, we have a rule, family first, and we are concerned about each other, like, all the way around. Like, if our kid is like hanging from the ceiling fan because they're having a crazy day, or one kid like is busting their chin on a slide and they need to go to the urgent care or something. Family first, we're always checking on each other, making sure that we can be helpful in any capacity to each other. If somebody needs time off for a homecoming, a deployment, anything like that, like, we're constantly concerned about each other because Squared Away is a family, and that's the way we look at it. So I think it's more about, like, be concerned about the whole person as opposed to just one area of one person.
Do you have you seen certain areas where, and this kind of gets into more of like the future of work discussion, which I'm super curious to hear your take, because we hear so much, and this is something we of course are pushing at base, with leaders that don't have assistants. Assistants truly are a strategic arm to the leader that they support, and that role is evolving every single day. Have you seen, with assistants at Squared Away, or just your thoughts in general with how the world is becoming more and more remote, even after, the pandemic will eventually end? I'm convinced it will end one day. Whenever that day gets here, I think, some companies have said, hey, remote work is working. Like, we're going to stay remote for the most part. I'm curious to hear, hear about ways you've seen assistants succeed amid the pandemic, and just interesting ways assistants are supporting their leaders.
Oh my goodness. I've seen so many different ways people are just shifting their mindsets and working together. We've had clients that have gone from, globe trotting 24/7, and their assistants being responsible for getting them from country to country to place, and then them literally being stuck in their house for months, and them having to shift their entire paradigm. So the assistants are reaching out more and asking them, hey, have you thought about X, Y, and Z with your family? Have you thought about like getting reimbursed for travel? Like, how can we make this remote as opposed to an in-person event? How can we shift and make this a conference online? Like, different things like that they would typically attend in person. So I've seen clients who are very not open to change, pivoting and being more open to different ideas that our assistants have to help them pivot to be more interactive virtually. So that's been interesting to see, especially the people who are kind of tend to be a little bit more of a stick in the mud when it comes to technology.
Well, I think that, have you found that you found clients, or have you just seen in the industry in general, industries that have said, okay, we've finally been forced into, or not finally, but we've been forced into this remote setting. I need support. Where have you seen assistant support expand?
Oh my goodness.
Different roles or industries. I'm curious because I think, like, here at Bates, our theory is, we want every knowledge worker to have access to an assistant. And so many organizations don't realize what an assistant can actually do for them and the impact that they can make. So yeah, I'm curious if you've seen.
Education has been a huge one. Yes, absolutely. And not just like at the collegiate level, like at the high school, elementary school level. Like, that's been interesting because teachers are bringing on assistants to help them with lesson planning and prepping and teaching them how to time block. Teachers of all people teaching teachers how to time block, which is, I'm like, wait, what is happening? But it's interesting because, that's something that they're used to doing in person without any distractions, without any having to teach them to work from home. Teaching somebody to work from home is not just saying, okay, let's put a laptop on a kitchen table and call it good. It's getting in the right frame of mind to work and say, this is my workspace. I can actually be productive and not think about the laundry that's going on 2 doors from me right now. Right. And be able to time block and not thinking about kids that are playing in the next room, that kind of thing. Working from home is actual working from home. I actually had to sit down and have a very hard heart-to-heart with my husband a few years ago about what work from home looks like. So I've kind of transitioned some of this over to our clients who did have difficulty with COVID working from home. And our teachers has been one that they didn't know how to do it. They were so used to having periods for lesson planning and that kind of thing, and they just don't have that anymore.
That's super interesting. We talk a lot about setting those communication expectations when you're working from home. And because And I've fallen victim to this so many times. I don't shut.
I think we all have. Don't worry.
We're always working. We feel like we have to be on. It's like that 5 minutes I did just go check my laundry. I have to make that up with 40 more minutes of work, which is insane. Like I should not have that mindset. So what are recommendations that you would have for our audience watching today in terms of setting communication expectations, cadences, so you're taking care of yourself as well as, getting your job done?
Self-care is number one. It's something that I was a horrible, horrible practicer of, and I make it my time every day. It's kind of like my reward. Like I've done X, Y, and Z. Regardless of if I have 50 emails in my inbox, I'm going to do this for me every single day. And it can be something like just taking a walk or reading my book on like outside for 30 minutes. It doesn't matter. Reward yourself, take care of yourself at some point every single day, even if that includes reading in your closet by yourself with no kids screaming at you.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Take care of yourself. You cannot fill anybody else's cup if your cup is completely empty. You can't do it. And this is speaking from experience. I burnt myself out totally. And you just can't do anything if you're not taking care of yourself. So absolutely make time for self-care is my first and foremost request of everybody. Second is time block.
Yeah.
If you want to go check your laundry for 5 minutes, don't punish yourself by doing 40 minutes of work because you checked your laundry for 5 minutes. I am very like plain, and I do blocks of 30 minutes. So I'll do 30 minutes of work. I'll do 30 minutes of playing with my kids or doing something in my house. So I break it up that way. And I'll get my self-care in there at some point. That way my kids are at school, my priorities are met for the day. And when I pick them up from preschool, I am mom until they go to bed. And there's no emails, there's no fires, knock on wood. But at that point in time, my family time is a hard boundary with my clients. So that's my biggest tips. How do I practice self-care? I try to do a few different things every week to mix it up. I love to read. So I will pick one of the probably trashiest novels and dive into it.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah. Ellen Hildebrand is like my new favorite.
There you go.
I will pick a nonfiction, something that's totally not related to my life, and read it for 30 minutes a day. I will go for a walk. I really got into painting, and bubble baths are like my jam in the evenings. So I'm very simple, but it's amazing what a few simple things can do for your sanity, especially in the time of COVID.
Well, sometimes that's all it takes is a bubble bath,
Yes.
You're good to go.
And a bath bomb.
Exactly. It's the little things these days, seriously. We had some questions submitted before today's event, so I'd love to dig into some of those.
Absolutely.
We have some folks that are wanting to know, so on your website, you guys offer, like we said, a totally diverse set of services, which is super awesome. One of those being startup and VC support. And someone asked how they pretty much research how to do that, or where to even start if they're at an early stage company and they're wanting to support their executive in that strategic way, but maybe haven't done so before.
So one of the things that I put together with another VC is a fundraising checklist, which is something that I can't imagine going through fundraising with a venture capitalist or a early stage startup doing fundraising and not having, because anybody who's walked through one of those rounds with your CEO realizes that it's like 2 or 3 full-time jobs in one, on top of also trying to do their actual job. So basically it's keeping them completely organized. If you actually want to email me, I can share our CEO fundraising checklist with you. And keeps you and your CEO organized from start to finish, literally from the brainstorming process all the way through to the party planning at the end when you guys have completed your round.
I'm noting that down. If you wouldn't mind, I may include that in our follow-up email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put you on the spot there. But
no, absolutely. It's something that I wish we had I had put together sooner. Like it's such a necessity, because without it, I feel like you're just kind of grasping at straws and reacting instead of being proactive in the process.
Another one of our questions are, how do, and this, I know this may not be particular to what you guys do at Squared Away, but a lot of folks have asked for your advice on advocating for themselves and possibly getting a raise or promotion. As I know that one's always so tough.
That is such a tough one. My best advice would just be to have that conversation with your manager and just share your strengths and what you're hoping to bring to the table and to the company long term. And just be honest and transparent with what your goals are. Transparency is my 100% advice for everything. So go into it with an open mind and always be curious. Like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I would love your mentorship on how I can continue to grow in this company. And this is what I think I bring to the table.
Mentorship is something that gets brought up a lot. And, I have like 3 to 4 mentors that I personally rely on for, a wide array of things. Do you have, I'm assuming that mentorship's huge at Squared Away, considering the close-knit community. How important do you think having a mentor is to professional and personal development?
Oh my gosh. I think it is the most important thing. If you're sitting on a ledge by yourself with 50 decisions to make about 50 different things, holy cow, that's overwhelming. But if you have 50 people or 25 people to sit and chat through those decisions with, you have subject matter experts, essentially, or people with more understanding than you, who are not literally sitting on the ledge, who care about you and are interested in watching you succeed. I like to say I have 10 mentors, because they're like my favorite people in the world. But these are people who genuinely care about me. They genuinely care about my success, and they're going to give me their 2 cents whether or not I want to hear it. That's the 3 things I think are most important in a mentor. So I definitely recommend bouncing your ideas and your thoughts and feelings off of them.
Do you have, are there any recommendations you would have for people that are looking for different, just like personal and professional growth opportunities? I mean, of course, here at Base, we have our weekly Base Live events, and we try to give you guys as many resources as we possibly can. But I'm curious with, again, the fact that you live, right, or Squared Away has always been remote. You've moved quite a bit, and so how have you rooted yourself in, continued professional growth?
So I really love Base Lives. I think are great. I've actually attended a few myself, and I think LinkedIn Learning share a ton of information, especially geared towards executive assistants, oddly enough. And I would just say take advantage of all the free resources that are out there for you. If you're paying for anything, I would see if you can find it for free elsewhere. I am all about free resources, and trust me, you can definitely go far. I know HubSpot also has a HubSpot University. There's free.
Oh yeah, they're great.
So I think there's a few other ones. I'm happy to get some links together and share, because I'm all about advancing and increasing your knowledge without having to pay for it.
Yeah, totally. And for those of you, you brought up LinkedIn. We're having, I'll drop it again in our follow-up email, but Lindsay Robinson, an EA at LinkedIn, she's done a Rock Your Profile session with us. And I think they actually host some Rock Your Profile sessions within different LinkedIn communities. So I would be sure to check that out too. Is that something that it's always hard to brag about yourself and beefing up? Like, I hate updating my LinkedIn profile. Like,
Same, but it is so important to do it, and I'll be the first one to admit that it is not my favorite thing, but it is very important because in this day and age, I see more people looking at LinkedIn as opposed to resumes.
totally. I would 100% agree. Yeah. Have you, I lost my train of thought, but I wanted to ask you about, when you're in terms of advocating for yourself, I think that's something that we all struggle with. And I love how you mentioned continue to be curious. That's something that one of our speakers said at our summit too, that they always try to be curious versus being driven by your insecurities and like maybe being scared to try something new. Instead, be curious to try something new and continue to open up opportunities for yourself. How do you try to do that in your day to day? Because I feel like personally for me, I try to think, okay, I'm going to put 20 minutes aside for myself and check out this tool one day. But we never prioritize ourselves. Especially executive assistants, because they're always doing the most for everybody else. And they're, incredibly talented strategic resources. So how would you, what are your recommendations?
So I'm actually going to give a homework assignment on this. It's pretty straightforward though. I would recommend reading a book. It's called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet. He's a former Navy captain. He literally had the lowest ranked submarine in the Navy. And using his leadership techniques, he turned it from the lowest in the Navy to the number one in the Navy. And it was all about being curious first and teaching your team to be a leader instead of a follower. So coming to you with a solution as opposed to coming to you with can I do this? Or is it okay if I do X, Y, and Z? Or coming to you for permission or something like that. But being curious is asking the who, what, when, where, why, how. So it's asking all the pertinent questions, but it's saying, okay, well, how did this make you feel? Or how do you feel like this was an important piece of information? Or how can we get the same effect and shift our mindset from coming at it from you should have done X, Y, Z to why did you feel like it was okay to do X, Y, Z? Or what was your thought process here? So being curious first can actually empower your team to talk to you more. And so it's a hard practice for me, and my husband thinks it's funny because I practice on him all the time. But it's something where if I'm asking my team for something and I say, hey, what is X, Y, and Z? And they say, or my director of operations will actually say, like, is there a different question? Can you ask it a different way? And I'm like, oh, okay, got me. How can this be different? But it's changing your mindset from that direct management style to that, how can I be curious? How can I come at it from a different angle? And doing that personally, it's okay, let me be curious, blocking time on your calendar for 20 minutes to explore a new tool and saying, this is a hard boundary. Nobody's coming in this unless my house is on fire or something crazy is happening. So making sure that you set that time aside for you. Sorry, I went off on a long diatribe.
I love it. We're here to listen to you. You're fine. That's what we love these discussions. Yeah, I dropped the link in for you guys too. I think it was the right book on Amazon. If not, it looks like it's a good book. So
it's phenomenal, and I highly recommend it. It's such a different and unique take on leadership styles.
I think what you said too, I think we get this question every Base Live. How do I become more strategic? And I think that notion of being curious is where it can start, because that's where you start unlocking all of these different, like you said, ways of approaching things, how you make an impact with whoever you're working with, whatever size organization it is. That's such great advice.
And it's not something, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it comes super naturally, because it doesn't. It's just not the way we were taught to be managers and to be in a business. But if you take any type of situation and sit down and say, okay, how can I go from having an emotional conversation about this to having a strategic conversation and asking the right curiosity questions for this particular instance? So it's really interesting. And it's something that it's like training a new muscle. The more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. Because at first, I totally stunk at it. I'm not even going to lie. But over time, it gets a lot easier.
Well, I mean, it's like you have to almost like train that muscle, that emotional muscle, to start thinking that way, because there's not a lot of instant gratification from it. Whereas when you complete a project or you complete a task or a deadline, it's done. You succeeded, right?
Exactly.
There's more risk in trying something new or being curious about something new, which is always, it's always scary.
Yeah, it always is. But sometimes the risks outweigh or the reward outweighs the risks. I can't talk.
We know what you mean. I would love to hear. So what would be, what are some like key and more back on the lines of future of work a little bit? What are 2 to 3 things that you think will separate the good from the great in terms of up-leveling yourself in your assistant role this year?
I would definitely say being proactive versus reactive. So trying to think a few steps ahead of your clients or your team or whomever you're working with. Think outside the box. What's the next thing that's going to break? Like think about it that way. Like things are going well, you don't have any problems. What's going to break next? Like I think about that with Squared Away. Things are going well. Okay, what's going to be the next thing to break? And then the second thing would be stay on top of your tools. Like, what are some new and improved tools that are coming out? We are in the midst of a tech time where new tools are being launched constantly. Like the last few weeks, new tools are coming out like constantly on Product Hunt, which is my favorite place to look for new tools. So that's another site I would recommend. And just try them out, check them out, take that 20 minutes to be curious, check out the tool. If it's something that you and your client think would be helpful or you think would be helpful to your client, be proactive and say, hey, I know you're spending 30 minutes every day doing this, but this automates it for you. And maybe we could try this tool. It would be amazing for you and for them how much of a genius you would look like by sharing that tool with them.
Love that. And you touched on this too, and we talk about this almost every base live. Look at where you're needing help to help guide you on where to start, because it can be overwhelming to try new tools. Of course, at base, we want you to get into base and use base every day. But for things that like we do, like social media management and all those different things, like almost do a self audit of, okay, what is like stressing me out? What is taking the most time out of my day or my executive's day or whatever leader I'm supporting? And that can kind of help steer you to where you should start in looking for different tools.
Absolutely. And taking the time to brainstorm with your client or whomever you're supporting and saying, okay, what's driving you crazy this week? And how can we work together to find a solution? Let's brainstorm together. I love brainstorming with client sessions because they're like, what? You could do that? That's like
the wow factor.
The wow factor. Yes. Yeah.
I love it. And guys watching now, or if you're watching the replay, feel free to drop your favorite tools in the thread, share them. That's what this community is for. I think the checklist that you mentioned, I will definitely make sure I get that so we can put that in the follow-up email too, because I think that will be super beneficial. We also have a couple different templates if you guys haven't logged into Base yet, I'll do my quick little plug. We have a ton of different templates, digest templates within the Base platform as well that you can customize to however you work or what you're needing it for. So make sure you guys check those out. But Michelle, was there any other tips or tricks or just words of advice you wanted to share with our audience today?
I think that was about it. I just want to touch on self-care again. Like, make sure that you are refilling your cup with more than just caffeine every day and doing something for you and not burning your candle at both ends, because trust me, it may seem like it's worth it sometimes, but the end result is just a burned candle. And trust me, you don't want to be just a burned candle at the end. So take care of yourself first and foremost.
Absolutely. The number one thing, whether it's a bubble bath or
bubble baths, all the bubble baths.
Yeah. Trashy romance novel. Jackie Collins is my go-to. So I'm all for it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. This has been a pleasure. And everyone, thanks for watching today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course. Our pleasure.